So we're getting closer and closer to getting some more big reveals for Borderlands 4, but we're still getting some very exciting information from some developer interviews, and the information we're going over in this video is the thing that has made me the most excited for Borderlands 4. And this comes from an interview with Anthony Nicholson, who's the senior project producer for Borderlands 4. Now, the first bit of this information was Anthony Nicholson talking about how they're keeping Borderlands 4 fresh compared to all of the previous entries. He goes on to say that Borderlands 4 gives players the greatest freedom to shoot and loot that they've ever had in the franchise, which stays true to the core of what made Borderlands so innovative when it first landed on the scene. But then we have the part that made me the most excited, because he goes on to say that on top of the new traversal mechanics and a more seamless world experience, Borderlands 4 features the deepest and most diverse skill trees of any Borderlands title yet. The goal behind that is to give the players an unprecedented level of expression through their builds. And later in this video, we're also going to go over how these skill trees have advanced through all of the Borderlands games. And when you go back and look at all of those skill trees, especially when we get to Borderlands 3, you'll see how having a more expansive skill tree than even that is going to be absolutely ridiculous for Borderlands 4. And he also goes on to give us a little bit of additional information, or kind of tease at how Borderlands 4 is going to be. He does say that within the next couple months, we will be getting more information on Borderlands 4's characters and builds, but he also goes on to say that Borderlands 4 is the most ambitious Borderlands yet, and a significant next step in the evolution of the genre. So not only are we getting the most expansive skill trees of any of the Borderlands games, meaning we're going to have the most amount of build opportunities from any game, but Borderlands 4, being this incredibly expansive game in this franchise, has been reiterated by developer after developer in pretty much every developer interview we've gotten after the reveal of the game. So Borderlands 4 is definitely seeming to be taking the franchise to the next level in terms of just how big it is, how expansive it is, and how they're seeming to go much deeper into RPG mechanics. And the thing I most enjoy about the Borderlands franchise as a whole is just the build creation. And as we've gone from entry to entry in the franchise, we have gotten bigger skill trees and more ways to make builds and customize our characters. And Borderlands 4 having the most expansive skill tree is going to be pretty crazy because of the massive increases to the skill trees we've already gotten in the franchise. And starting off with Borderlands 1, we had the 3 different skill sections or skill trees we got to put points into. Every one of these trees had 7 different nodes to put points into, and then you had your one active skill. So starting off, the trees were pretty small when compared to most other RPGs, but then we went into Borderlands 2, and now every one of those 3 skill trees had 10 nodes up from 7, but still had just the one active skill. Then we go into Borderlands the pre-sequel, which isn't technically a mainline Borderlands game, but that had 11 nodes and the one active skill, so slightly bigger than Borderlands 2. But then we get into Borderlands 3, which is really the big jump in complexity and possibilities, because at the start of Borderlands 3, you still had the 3 trees, but you also had 3 different active skills to choose between. So every one of the trees had their own active skill you could select between. And since it's Borderlands, you could still put points into any tree you wanted and choose whichever one of those active skills you wanted. But then every tree had around 18 to 20 nodes you could choose between, but these nodes weren't exactly like the nodes from all of the other Borderlands games, because a large chunk of the nodes in the center of the tree were pretty similar to the old skill trees. You would be able to put 1 to 5 points into them depending which node it was, but then on the sides of the skill tree, you also had different points you could put in that were basically augments to your active skills. So you would choose that active skill, and then you could put in the points to the side of the tree that would change up your actual active ability in some way, giving it new effects, changing up what it does, giving buffs when you use it, or a bunch of different other possibilities. So the Borderlands 3 skill trees were expanded in every possible way. You had more main nodes, you had more active skills you could choose between, and you had the new addition to modifiers to to your active skills. And then also later down the road in Borderlands 4, they also added a 4th skill tree to every one of the Vault Hunters, which gave another active skill and the 18 to 20 nodes in the tree itself. And when looking at the amount of options you actually had in Borderlands 3, they more than doubled the amount of options you have and possibilities you have when looking at the launch of the game. Then when you add in the 4th skill tree, they even expanded much beyond that. And we do also have Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which works in a bit of a different way. Their skill trees are similar sizes to Borderlands 3, but then you obviously have the kind of multi-classing where you have one main skill tree and then you can choose between any of the other skill trees in the game for your secondary one, which is definitely quite a bit different from all of the other Borderlands games. And there is the possibility that they add some type of element like this to Borderlands 4, where maybe you can switch out a skill tree to a different one, but you still have all of the 3 that you could put points into. There is a possibility that they implement some features similar to that. If I'd have to guess, it'll probably be just similar to, say, the Borderlands 3 skill trees, just pretty heavily expanded upon. And when we add in the information that these skill trees of Borderlands 4 are just going to be bigger than Borderlands 3, these skill trees are probably going to be pretty big and pretty expansive to have even more options than Borderlands 3. And I do very much hope they keep the options to choose between different active skills and also have those different augments to the side of the skill trees that allow you to further augment those active skills. And if they even wanted to go past that, I would be in favor of allowing us to have multiple active skills at a time. Now you do have this with Zane the Vault Hunter from Borderlands 3, where you can have multiple active skills at a time. Honestly, I hope they add that to just every Vault Hunter for Borderlands 4, allow them to just have multiple active skills if they want to, and then expand the trees to have even more nodes on top of that. I think just going more and more into allowing you to make crazy builds would just generally be a positive thing for Borderlands and would just make the game much more replayable. So I am very excited to finally be able to see these skill trees, how big they are, how expansive they've become, and just how many different possible builds we're going to be able to create when it comes to Borderlands 4. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.